Beautiful. We are back, and it's time for us to have a look at the newspapers. That is Jackie Gashiri, and that was such an amazing, profound song. Beautiful, beautiful song. And that was our song break. And thank you so much for tuning in once again. This is Hope at Dawn. It's time for the newspaper review, and my name is Beatrice Ludi. And it's time for us to look at the newspapers, and I'll be starting us off with the Daily Nation. And wow, the very first top story, of course, here is on education, and it is named Standoff, a 5-hour-long meeting between union leaders representing post-primary school teachers and government officials failed yesterday to unlock a stalemate, signaling possibility of confusion deepening today when most secondary schools are scheduled to open. Yesterday, the first day of third term, so some high school tutors staged protests across the country, and this is a story on pages 4 and 5, and I think some of you probably experienced that. And I see here our primary schools record low turnout even after NAT cancelled the strike, but we also have some secondary pupils actually going to school, so there's a lot of confusion because we don't really have any official communication saying, hey kids, don't go back to school yet. You know, there's a lot of confusion in the air, but we continue to follow up on the same. And still on the top page, I see page 2, very interesting story from mechanic to police chief Eliud Lagat's meteoric rise. And also still on the top page, Mombasa Cement NSSF food over 350 million shillings plot of land. And I see why Ruto Raila deals signal return of Pentagon. President Ruto has signaled a possible coalition with ODM leader Raila Odinga ahead of the 2027 elections. Very, very interesting. And right about now, we can now get inside a little bit and look at what is happening. And especially on page 3, I see Kenya Police in Haiti set to get salaries this week. Spokesperson says the officers will receive pay in their bank accounts tomorrow. I mean, it's interesting how this has been announced. Kama ulikuwa uko uwezi danganya ati pesa ijaingia, it's already announced right here. But I see 394 is the number of Kenyan police officers deployed to help keep peace in Haiti out of the 1,000 pledged as of July the 16th. And spokesperson says the officers definitely will receive their pay come tomorrow, and the acting IG assures peacekeepers' allowances have been processed, so they should not worry about whatever delays have been there. And page 4, I see Kupat members begin strikers talks with Labour. CS failed to end standoff. And I see here a group of teachers holding banners and definitely demonstrating. I see here Mr. Okello Misori saying the Labour CS agreed that we have genuine concerns, and he'll now meet with the TSC. So we continue to look at that. But I also see here that members of Kuppet in Bomet, Kericho and Narok counties vowed not to resume teaching until their grievances are addressed. The strike will be an effective tool to deal with the long-standing demands of our teachers who are underpaid, overworked and demotivated and work in an unfriendly environment, said Charles Ngeno, the Narok Kuppet branch secretary. So we continue to wait and see how this turns out, but definitely students are supposed to be getting back to school as from yesterday. And still on page 6 is still the same story. Talk to TSC as you work, teachers told. And I see here Migos says paralyzing learning is not a solution. Education CS lauds NAT for reading. Nation's mood a calling of strike. 7,500 classrooms to be built at a cost of 7.5 billion. Education Cabinet CS Julius Migos said they are to be completed by December. That is among the projects that are being undertaken. And I see here that in an impromptu visit to some schools in Machakos, Kajiado, and Nairobi counties, the CS said that the government has improved facilitation to ensure that teachers provide their services without any interruption. So they are being advised to get back to school even as the conversations continue. But the question is, will they budge? We continue to follow up on that. And of course, page 8 is the story that I did mention on the top page. Ruto Raila deals signal return of ODM Pentagon. I see President William Ruto saying, I thank my brother Raila Odinga for accepting to work with me. We want to work together and bring the country's interest forward. Quite a a twist right there from what many definitely expected. But I see here the 2 and 3 others worked together in 2007 elections. Could this be a repeat of the same? And I see here National Assembly Minority Leader Junet Mohammed called for reconciliation between the two political formations, citing better exchanges during the 2022 election campaigns. And that is a story on page 8. And page 10 is Mombasa Cement NSSF feud over 350 million shillings land. Farm accuses 3 brothers of forging documents to lay claim to the property. And Mombasa Cement, through Russian Delwash, told the court that its payment of the purchase price balance after settlement of the HAP Investco case was upon demand by NSSF's lawyers. Wetangula, Adan and Makoha advocates. The cement farm filed in court all correspondence and payment documents related to its dealings with the NSSF. Look at that story on page 10. That is of Daily Nation. And let us look at a bit of international news. I see after Hezbollah-Israel exchange, Lebanese wary fight could drag on. Yesterday, Israeli jets broke the sound barrier over Beirut, shaking glass throughout the city. And Mr. Mohammed here saying, we hope that something good will happen to have some commercial activity and for the situation to improve. And I see here also just looking at the counties as well. I see unsold tea leaders rift top KTDA bosses priority list. I see here also displaced Baringo landslide victims in dilemma as schools reopen. Mombasa lawmakers unhappy with the mode of issuing bursary cash. A story on page 23 of the county news. And going to the back page, I see MPs question veracity of 5 billion shillings IEBC owes lawyers. Commission CEO says hiring of external lawyers was okayed by Attorney General. And at a glance, is 4.9 billion owed to various law firms in pending bills as of June 30th relates to the election petitions, dispute resolution complaints, and candidates' registration and administration of oaths. Other than the billions owed to the law firms, there is also 163 million shillings in outstanding judgments and cost awarded against the commission. A story on the back page. Still on the back page, Treasury set to release July-August funds to avert crisis in counties. On the sports page, athletes dream big after success in inaugural run, and this is Charles Mule. I see here Florence Carrier and Elijah Mwangi have set the sights on winning more athletics titles following their success in 10-kilometer categories of amateur race dubbed Majestic Impact Run at the weekend in Jiru, Nairobi County. And page 34, Gor legend Sonyi calls for total football to tame Egyptian foes. A story on page 34. And coming to the Standard, I see man of the moment. A very big picture here of Raila Odinga. As you can see on your screen, I see President William Ruto is today expected to officially launch Raila's AUC bid at State House, with at least 4 African presidents expected to attend. This marks a significant milestone in the political life of Raila as it cements his stature as an African statesman. This is a story on page 4, well covered. And I see William Ruto here saying, we have an opportunity to produce the next AUC chairman, and we must work together because it's not a position that belongs to a person but our collective responsibility. Definitely brotherhood looming between the two. And I see here anxiety as learners troop back to school. Still a lot of anxiety because students, some of them are still going back. I mean, some of you probably have also taken your kids to school. A student accompanied by his parent returns to school in Eldoret yesterday. Parents in many parts of the country looked for affordable transport back to school. Most students complained of the rise in bus fare, which they claimed had doubled or tripled, with secondary school teachers on strike. Many were uncertain of what to expect in the schools, but they still went. And this is now what complicates matters even more, because if at all we have kids who are traveling so far to go to their schools and then they get there and they're not teachers, what that means is that it's a double loss for the parent. And they still have to pay their fare back. So it's really, really bad at such a time as this. I mean, we need clarity moving forward so that the confusions will not be there. And I see here still on the top page, what has been covered is more Kenyans turn to digital lenders to cope. Faced with soaring food prices, a growing number of Kenyan households are increasingly relying on mobile loans to make ends meet. And I think this is actually the worst, because even when we have had financial advisors come through, they have advised that if you're taking a loan, don't take it to spend. A loan is not supposed to be used to spend on things that you need. A loan should be something that you know is going to bring something back, and then you're going to get back on that investment. But unfortunately, with the situation that we have in the country, people are having to take these loans to cater for the bare minimum of necessities. And let us continue. Page 2 here. Uphill task for a town that shuts down at 9 p.m. to compete as a city. Unlike other Kenyan cities, Eldoret is one city without traffic lights. Interesting. It has also sewerage challenges, especially when it rains. Willie Kenei here saying, who is the Uasin Gishu KNCCI chairman, we have 2 public universities and private institutions of higher learning, and that means that the city has readily available labor. We have the best climate in the region, and this is a story on page 2. And more on the same, the Uasin Gishu County government says the recent commissioning of Mama Rachel Ruto Maternity Hospital would improve healthcare in the new city. Page 3, evidence on trial, the line between rape and consent. Very, very deep story here. Lala invited her friend James to her house and gave him a place to sleep. She claimed James raped her. On the other hand, James said it was consensual. A story on page 3. You can look at that as well. And page 4, I see here Ruto to unveil Raila's campaign for Africa. Top job, of course. We did touch on that. Aden Duale here, still on the same, saying we know our candidate. We know his experience and capabilities. We are presenting a tested, experienced African statesman, a Pan-Africanist to the continent. Definitely, Raila has geared up a lot of support right there. And I see here page 6, of course, it's high school teachers down tools as primary records low turnout. Many primary schools definitely have resumed, but then the problem is most students have also not gone back to school, despite the fact that they did mention that they are calling off the strikes. And I see here 9 weeks is the time running. We just have 9 weeks. So term 3, the final term of academic year, will last. The term commenced yesterday to October 25th. It's a very, very short term. So definitely with all these things happening, we are losing time. And the students need to prepare for their national examination. So we pray for sanity in that. And page 7, government begs teachers to soften stance. Still on the story that we covered on the Daily Nation, Education Cabinet Secretary Julius Migos urged KUPPET to reconsider its position. Union demands include confirmation of 46,000 teachers, promotions and medical cover improvement. Definitely, this is where you say Rome cannot be built in a day, but definitely Rome should have started being built a long time ago. Definitely this particular CS is coming in at a very, very tricky time, but this is a story on page 7 and you can look at more on the same. And page 8, student loan headache as president makes case for new funding model. President Ruto painted old model as untenable and a time bomb that's killing varsities. Over 2,600 students want their classification of financial aid reviewed. A story on page 8. And page 9, shouting march as the ACC tussles with MP over summons. I see Didmas Barasa being accused of extorting businesswoman 2 million shillings. He allegedly promised to deliver road construction tenders to the trader. Quite a scandal right there on page 9. And coming to the pullout, that is the financial standard. The story here on page 20 is state agency to spend 270 million to lure more youth into agriculture. You know, funny enough, this very morning we were just talking about how many have definitely turned to this side, and it's really making good profits because, you know, food is the one thing you can never go wrong with. So this is, I think, a good initiative. Among the plans by AFA is conducting a baseline survey to determine their involvement in the sector. So definitely 270 million shillings is to be spent to lure more youth into agriculture. It's a very good place. It's not a dirty job. It's actually a lucrative venture. How appetite for land killed one of Kenya's oldest insurance. Look at that story on page 21. And let's come to the sports page here. Ericsson takes a walk to the land of no return. Sven Goran found success as a football manager after retiring as a defender. Ex-England manager Sven Goran Eriksson dead at 76. Very, very sad. That's a story on page 40. And page 38, who could change club shots before transfer window closes? Aaron Ramsdale is yet to feature for Arsenal this season. Sterling, Trippier and Tony could be in line for the exit. So that's it for the newspaper review. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end, and it's time for us to usher in the video of the day. But before we do that, just to remind you that at the top of every hour on Hope FM, we have news updates. We have Kipenga, and definitely we have the News Watch at 9 p.m. right here on Hope TV Kenya. We have Dira at 7 p.m. so you can definitely be up to date with what we are doing right here. So thank you so much for staying all the way to the end of the newspaper review. This also helps us to know how to pray. So let us now look at the video of the day.